Hi all. In this presentation, I will present corporate ownership around the world by Rafael Laporta, Florencia Lopez de Solanes, and Andre Schleifer. The paper was published in the Journal of Finance in 1999. So first of all, what is the research question? The central research question of this paper is to investigate the state of corporate ownership structures. The authors identified an influential 1932 book written by Burley and Means that outlined the image of dispersed shareholders that cannot hold the corporate managers accountable, then noted that more recent literature has found evidence that contradicts the Burley and Means image. Namely, some studies have found evidence of concentrated ownership and majority shareholders. This paper focuses on the largest publicly traded firms in some of the generally richest economies, as they are most likely to have dispersed ownership. And this paper investigates the ultimate owners of a company instead of the superficial first level ownership. In the next slide, this paper focuses on four questions. One, how common are widely held firms in different countries as opposed to firms that have owners with significant voting rights? Two, what is the extent to which firms have significant owners and who are they? Three, how do these owners maintain their power? And four, what explains the differences between countries and their ownership patterns? This study is important because it could help one understand mechanisms and incentives that connect corporate managers and investors. As previously mentioned, this paper focuses on previous literature that's related to the 1932 book by Burley and Means, The Modern Corporation and Private Property. At first, many studies confirmed the image that corporations were owned by dispersed shareholders, and the shareholders could not hold the managers accountable. However, newer studies have discovered evidence of concentrated ownership in even larger American firms, which one would expect to have dispersed shareholder base. Um, and then, so what data is used? So the author selected 27 countries based on 1993 per capita income, but excluded countries without prominent equity markets. For each of the 27 countries, a large group was constructed. This group contained the 20 largest companies by market cap at the end of 1995. Then, to control for the potential effects of size variation between different countries, a medium sized firm group was constructed. This group contained the smallest 10 firms in each country with market capitalization of at least 500 million at the end of 1995. There was some overlap between the two groups for certain countries, and the groups could not be filled for certain countries. In the end, the large firm group had 540 samples, and the two groups had a total of 691 different firms. Other restrictions were applied as well, including excluding all affiliates of foreign firms and excluding the banks and utilities from the sample of medium sized firms. So now we're going to talk about Table 1. So in the first table, the authors specify the definitions of the variables that will appear in other tables. So you'll want to go through these so that you're prepped for Table 2 and beyond. In Table 2, Panel A used the 20% chain definition of control, while Panel B used the more lenient 10% chain definition of control. Each panel was divided into two parts. The top half represents countries with good shareholder protection, and the bottom half represents countries with poor shareholder protection. In Panel A, slightly more than one half of the sample large firms were widely held. In Panel B, only 24% of large firms were widely held. This contradicted the Burley and Means image. Furthermore, the T statistics indicate that firms in countries with good shareholder protection were more likely to be widely held. In Table 3, this is similar to Table 2, but instead of the large firm sample, Table 3 looks at the medium sized firm sample. Panel A shows that overall 24% of medium sized firms were widely held. 38% of medium firms in good protection countries were widely held, while only 13% of medium firms in bad protection countries were widely held. Panel B shows that only 11% of medium firms were widely held, and widely held firms were more common in countries with good protection than in countries with bad protection. Combined together, Table 2 and Table 3 show that larger companies in countries with good shareholder protection were most likely to be widely held. However, dispersed shareholder ownership does not dominate the sample firms. Table 4 presents the average fraction of book capital needed to control 20% of the votes, the incidence of cross shareholdings by sample firms, and the frequency of pyramids in firms with controlling owners at the 20% control level. Overall, it took a fraction of book capital that wasn't significantly lower than 20% to control 20% of the votes, thus indicating that multiple classes of shares were not a central mechanism of separating ownership and control. However, 26% of firms were controlled through pyramids. 18% of firms in the good protection group were controlled through pyramids, while 31% of firms in the bad protection group were controlled through pyramids. This indicates that pyramidal ownership was a more prominent mechanism used by controlling shareholders to gain more voting rights. Finally, the third column shows that cross shareholdings by sample firms in the firms that control them or in the controlling chain were rare. Now we're going to look at Table 5. Table 5 looks at family control in the sample of large firms. The second column shows that on average, the ultimate family owners control 25% of the value of the top 20 firms. The third column shows that on average, a powerful controlling family controls more than one large firm. The fourth column measures the separation of ownership and management by quantifying the frequency of which a member of the controlling family was the CEO, the chairman, the honorary chairman, or the vice chairman. The proportion is quite significant, as for at least 69% of the sample companies, families that controlled firms also participated in management. Due to incomplete data, this percentage could be even higher in reality. One side note that the authors made was that on preliminary calculations, about a third of the family controlled firms were run by their founders, and the rest by the descendants of founders or families that came to own them later. And now we're going to look at Table 6. Table 6 investigates the extent to which financial institutions control large firms. The first column shows that only 5% of the sample large firms were controlled by financial institutions, which refers to banks and insurance companies. However, in countries where financial institutions did control shareholders, such as Belgium, Portugal, and Sweden, the banks often controlled more than one large firm. Then the authors looked for financial institutions outside the 20% control chain in two ways. First, they looked for financials that had more than 10% of the votes, but were not part of the 10% control chain. These financial institutions were called independent financials. The fourth column shows that only 6% of sample firms had such financials as shareholders. They then looked for financial institutions that were themselves a link in a 10% control chain. These financial institutions were called associated financials. The fifth column shows that only 3% of sample firms had such institutions. Overall, the table shows that financial institutions did not play a huge role as significant shareholders in corporate governance outside a few countries. And so this concludes our overview of this paper. And I hope that you guys enjoyed corporate ownership around the world. And I will see you in the next video.